Dr. Bob Edgar, it's a great honor to have you with me in this program.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be with you.
Dr. Edgar, a bipartisan group of 27 U.S. senators sent a letter to President Obama asking for a sizable and sustained reduction of U.S. military forces in Afghanistan beginning in July 2011. And the letter was supported by a dozen of current and former officials, including 4 generals. What is their argument? Why do they want large Afghanistan troop withdrawal?
Since the death of Osama bin Laden, there has been a growing interest on the part of a large number of Americans to scale back our involvement in the Afghan war. There's a whole group of senators and House members who believe we shouldn't have revamped and upgraded our investment in Afghanistan. There's another group that believes that it's very difficult in that tribal society to accomplish nation building. And there's another group that simply believe we've been there for 10 years. It's time for us to reduce our presence. We also are facing in the United States deep economic and financial issues, not too dissimilar to what's happening in the European Union, where we have debt problems. We've been spending over our head in 2 wars. And unfortunately, when the Congress of the United States voted to go to war, they did not raise taxes or revenues to pay for the wars. So in a sense, the United States Congress and the administrations of George Bush and Obama have created this deficit debt problem that everyone is talking about. So the sooner we can reduce the level of troops in Afghanistan, the sooner we can phase out of our war economy, the better off we'll be all across the board. And that's what the 27 senators are reflecting in their letter. This is also a time when President Obama is making a decision on reduction of troops, and while it was first thought that he would make a modest reduction, I think these senators are trying to put pressure on the president to make a much more aggressive reduction of force at this point in history.
Last month, the House of Representatives sent a clear signal to President Obama for an accelerated withdrawal by narrowly failing to pass an amendment to the 2011 National Defense Authorization Act. 204 representatives voted aye, including a record 26 Republicans, and the amendment would have, among other things, required plan and time frame on accelerated transition of military operations to Afghan authorities from the Pentagon. But why is President Obama reluctant to define a clear timetable and transition of military operations to Afghan authorities?
I think what the House of Representatives did a month ago and what the senators are doing in their letter is simply signaling to the president that they want deeper reductions than he might be advised by his military commanders to accomplish. So I think both actions are somewhat related, but the President of the United States has not yet made his final decision on troop levels, and we ought to hold our criticism of the Obama administration until we see exactly what he decides to do. He's also getting pressure from our former Defense Secretary Gates, who is stepping down. He's been making strong comments about the need to phase down ground operations in both Iraq and Afghanistan. And finally, we've heard just over the weekend a dust-up between the retiring U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan and Hamid Karzai, who have been challenging each other in terms of their comments and commentary. Karzai has made some statements that sound like the United States is an occupying nation, and that is not sitting well with many of the House and Senate members, including the outgoing Defense Secretary. So all of this is in flux at this point. We should know in the next couple weeks what the actual drawdown of troops will be. My instinct says that the troop reduction will be deeper than anticipated, but not as deep as some would like.
Dr. Edgar, the extreme cost of the war of $2 billion a week, with long-term costs much higher, and questions whether the military strategy is actually making Americans safer, are causing Congress and Republican presidential candidates to call for a quicker end to the war. How could this issue affect the next presidential elections, in your opinion?
I think the conservative Republicans are divided. You have former Governor Romney, leading candidate on the Republican side, supporting a reduction of force in Afghanistan, and you have other more conservative, hawkish Republicans supporting increase of troops. So it's a divided Republican base. What's clear at this moment is that the Republicans do not have a viable alternative to the Obama administration or the Obama presidency. And I don't think the Afghanistan war will have a clear opposite opinion, regardless of who takes the reins as the nominee on the Republican side.
Iraqi and Afghan legislators, as well as Iraqi and Afghan people, say that the deadline for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq and Afghanistan cannot be extended. So, would there be any justification for the American forces to remain either in Iraq or Afghanistan when neither Iraqi people nor Afghan people are satisfied with the presence of U.S. troops and cannot tolerate occupation forces?
I think both countries are slightly different, but the answer to your question is no. I think that it's pretty clear on behalf of the American people that they want the Iraqi and the Afghan governments to be clear as to what they need. And my guess is if both nations' governing bodies ask us to leave, we will leave. That doesn't mean that they will be safe. I think we've seen in Iraq particularly that they're involved in a civil war between factions, political factions and religious factions. And I think we still have lots of tribal issues as it relates to Afghanistan. So I think you've got to view both countries with a uniqueness that they are. And I think that the rulers of those countries will have a lot to say about how long the Americans stay.
Well, Dr. Bob Edgar, President of Common Cause, based in Washington, D.C., I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed.
Good to talk with you, and best wishes to you.